In 1991, a group of civilian divers stumbled upon something that didn't make sense, a submarine resting where no submarine should be. What they uncovered over the next several years would rewrite history and raise chilling new questions. When they finally got inside, what salvage divers found inside the sunken Nazi German submarine would leave you speechless. This is the true story of U-869, and it begins with a mystery at the bottom of the sea, the ghost sub of World War II. In the dark, churning waters of the Atlantic during World War II, death could come without warning, without mercy. German U-boats prowled beneath the waves like sharks, silent and unseen, sinking thousands of Allied ships with cold precision. These submarines were Hitler's weapon of terror at sea, cutting off vital supply routes and leaving behind a trail of steel and oil. Of the hundreds of U-boats launched by Nazi Germany during the war, most were sunk, some were captured, and a few vanished without a trace. One of the most mysterious of all was U-869. Launched in 1943, U-869 was a Type 1C-40 U-boat, one of the largest long-range submarines built by the Kriegsmarine. Nearly 250 feet long and equipped with 6 torpedo tubes, it was designed to travel across the Atlantic and strike enemy ships deep in Allied-controlled waters. Its mission: disrupt, destroy, disappear. U-869 was commanded by Captain Helmut Neuerberg, a seasoned naval officer. In late 1944, as the tides of war turned against Germany, U-869 was sent on its first combat patrol. The plan, according to wartime records, was to head to the Gibraltar area, a strategic choke point where Allied ships funneled through the Mediterranean. But by then, there was chaos in the German command structure. Communication errors, conflicting orders, and a collapsing chain of command made things unclear. It's believed that U-869's mission may have changed en route. On February 11, 1945, a U.S. destroyer and a Coast Guard cutter reported attacking and sinking an unidentified German U-boat near Gibraltar. The official report chalked it up as a confirmed kill. Based on timing and projected U-boat movements, the Allies concluded that the submarine destroyed that day was U-869. The German Navy, defeated and fragmented, offered no contradictory account. And so, the story was settled. U-869 was presumed sunk off the coast of Gibraltar, taking all 56 of its crew with it to a watery grave. No survivors, no distress calls, no trace. For decades, no one questioned this version of events. It was one line in the massive, blood-soaked ledger of World War II, one more enemy sub that never came home. But when you looked closer, the story started to crack. First, there were no confirmed photographs or sonar images of a wreck near Gibraltar matching the dimensions or signature of U-869. Wartime reports were notoriously unreliable, often based on visual confirmation in chaotic combat conditions or guesses made under pressure. The Atlantic was vast, the technology primitive, and mistakes were common. Second, no German documentation from that period ever clearly stated U-869's final position. By 1945, Germany's war machine was falling apart. Radio traffic was lost, records were incomplete or destroyed, and the few logs that did survive were often ambiguous. Some experts now believe that U-869 may have never even reached the Strait of Gibraltar at all. And there was another, more chilling detail: the radio silence. German U-boats were required to report during missions, both to confirm their progress and to receive new orders. U-869 was last heard from while still in the North Atlantic, thousands of miles from its supposed death site. After that, nothing. Silence, as if the ocean itself had swallowed it whole. The deeper historians and researchers dug, the more questions they found. Was the submarine misidentified in that battle off Gibraltar? Was it rerouted without anyone knowing? Or was something Far more unusual at play? For over 40 years, U-869 remained an unresolved mystery. A ghost ship lost to time, buried in conflicting reports and fading memories. Families of the crew had no grave to visit, no wreckage to mourn. Just a name on a memorial in a wartime file that didn't quite add up. Even the experts couldn't agree. Military historians pointed to the Gibraltar attack and insisted the case was closed. But divers, wreck hunters, and amateur sleuths weren't so sure. And decades later, something strange showed up on sonar off the coast of New Jersey. Salvage. Divers were quick to check, and what they found would leave you speechless. The Jersey Mystery. The North Atlantic off the coast of New Jersey is a graveyard of steel. Beneath the waves lie hundreds of wrecks, victims of storms, collisions, and wars. For local divers, it's both a playground and a puzzle. But in the summer of 1991, a group of wreck divers found something unlike anything they'd ever seen. At the time, John Chatterton, Richie Kohler, and a small team of experienced Northeast divers were searching for unidentified wrecks using side-scan sonar. The waters off the coast were notoriously dangerous. Strong currents, low visibility, deep dives. These were not casual descents. This was technical diving, high-risk exploration that demanded planning, precision, and nerves of steel. Roughly 60 miles off the coast of Point Pleasant, New Jersey, at a depth of 230 feet, their sonar lit up with an image. It was a long, narrow object, torpedo-shaped, lying on the ocean floor. Something man-made, something old. But what? Curiosity turned to obsession when they made their first dive on the wreck. Visibility was terrible, barely a few feet. The cold bit through their suits. The structure was partially buried in sand and tangled in decades of fishing nets. A few passes around it confirmed the obvious. This was a submarine, a big one, and it wasn't supposed to be there. They couldn't see any hull numbers or markings at first. There was no nameplate, no plaque, no flags, nothing that would say what vessel this was. The structure was badly damaged. Its conning tower partially collapsed and its outer hull cracked. It was rusting slowly into oblivion. Was it American? Russian? German? No one knew. That's when the divers gave it a nickname, Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo was a riddle that challenged logic. No known World War II submarine had been recorded as lost anywhere near this location. And yet here it was, resting silently beneath the waves for nearly half a century. The dive team began a series of return expeditions. These were not quick dives. They required tri-mix gas blends, careful decompression stops, and meticulous planning. The risks were extreme. Divers could suffer from nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, or worst of all, the bends. But every dive brought back new clues. Inside the wreck, they found German gauges labeled in metric units, pipes, valves, and instrumentation. It was clearly a German U-boat. But which one? They retrieved small items, plates, bowls, bits of equipment, some marked with a marine eagle. But nothing definitive. The turning point came when they discovered a button knife, tarnished but intact, engraved with the name Hornberg. Not a model number, a man's name. This changed everything. Using naval records and crew lists, the divers traced the name to a real person, crewman Georg Hornberg, listed as having served on U-869. The divers kept digging, both underwater and in the archives. On a later dive, they recovered valve manifolds and diesel engine parts with serial numbers. They traced these numbers to shipyard records from Deschimag AG Weser, the German company that built U-869. The pieces matched. They had done it. Against all odds, these civilian divers had identified the mystery wreck. In 1997, 6 years after the first dive, the United States Navy officially acknowledged that the submarine wreck off New Jersey was indeed U-869. The implications were massive. U-869 had not been sunk near Gibraltar, as U.S. military records had claimed since 1945. It had died off the American East Coast, a full 3,000 miles away from where history had placed it. The divers had proven what no wartime record ever did. They had physically located and identified the wreck. They had found the truth. And then there was the eerie realization: no one had been looking for U-869. Had it not been for a handful of obsessed divers, it would still be rusting in anonymity, never telling its story. The U.S. Navy and historians took notice. Wreck divers around the world held it up as one of the greatest underwater identifications ever made, without institutional support. No military, no government, just a crew of recreational divers, determination, and hundreds of dangerous hours on the ocean floor. But the mystery wasn't entirely solved. The big question still loomed: how did U-869 end up here?